Emily, you can begin.
Has anyone heard of gap year? Well, gap year is a time of period, typically an academic year, taken by a student as a break between secondary school and higher education. Not every student graduating from high school will go to college. Some will decide never to go, and others will decide to take a year or two off between high school and college. Gap year is found in 1960, and Sheriff, a GapYear.com editor, said, "The gap year we know today is very different to what it once was, but it's clear where it came from." In 1960, it's a time of period where people has freedom in speaking an individual, a time of cultural and social revolution, a decade where gap year first became popular. And gap year was began with a cultural exchange, and people find it useful as to create a global awareness. So gap year grew throughout the 80s and 90s, and as the industry grew, people came back from gap year and start their own business. For example, Tom Griffith is a GapYear.com producer, and this website provides stories from students who write after they came back from gap year. More and more U.S. high school graduates takes a gap year between high school and college because of its practical benefit. There are many benefits of gap year. From 10 benefits of a gap year, an article that talks about the benefits of gap year asks, why take a gap year between high school and college? Well, it's a good question for us to be considered. First, you can experience a different culture. You won't be living in the same country, so there won't have the same culture. So you can learn to live in their culture. Second, you'll possibly learn a new language. If you're not in the same country as you live in, you probably won't be able to speak in their language. So if you want a closer relationship with them, you probably want to learn how to speak their language. Third, you will learn a new life skill. You won't be living with your family, so it's time for you to be independent. Due to the Global Citizen Year, it's a website which provides gap year information, said that 98% of the people said gap year helped them develop as a person. So now take out your handout. Madison Metz is a student that came back from gap year, and she said she wants to develop her passion in Spanish and Christianity in Costa Rica after she graduates. And she said that gap year led her to her dreams and passions. Okay, now put it away. You might be wondering how gap year is right for you. So you need to consider some of the things to think that if gap year is right for you. Each year, more and more colleges encourage students to take gap year. And more schools endorsing gap year and setting special deferment policies for students that are interested in. Due to Oshia, she said that gap year is more accessible to the lower income people. More and more school and gap year program provide financial aid to those students who are interested in. For example, on Prakash, EDGE is a website which provides free boardroom for those students. Employers are beginning to recognize fantasies that gap year provides. Oshia said, gap year alumni reports that many of the prospective skills and competencies gained during the year to work with diversity and through adversity to be confident and mature and to solve problems and think creativity. So how can you plan gap year wisely? You need to follow some steps to create your own plan. First, you need to think about what's your goal for the gap year. It may be a break from studying, experience for work, traveling, or other achievement that you may want to do. Second, you need to have a schedule to manage your time. For example, it may be a series of activities that you want to try. Maybe you want to try a new things. Third, you need to consider if you can afford the plan or not. You can take some course or have a job to think how you will pay the plan. You can also have a conversation with your parents to prevent your future plan. It might sound to you that gap year is always a positive choice, but it has some negative things that will affect you. The cons of gap year are if you choose it in wrong ways or if your parents disapprove you. If you choose gap year just because the top choice school reject you is not a good choice. It's best looking into the school that accepts you, and you'll never know, you'll probably begin to love your new school. If your parents disapprove you or discourage you of having gap year, or maybe they believe that gap year will lead a discounting in studying, take your time and educate your parents and show them your plan that you will do gap year wisely. There will be a lot of challenge you will need to face if you take gap year. However, gap year will be a great experience in your life. You might live in a different culture, you might learn a new language and develop new life skills. If you take gap year, this experience may be a climax in your life story.
Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Oh, you want to hold on to him just in case? You did the same thing to Flora. You're like, stay up for questions. I'm going to say, stay up for questions. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about gap year and Melody can answer them, please feel free to raise your hands and ask.
What do you think that's the best way to use the gap year? What's the best way to use the gap year?
The best way to use gap year? I think you have to plan like before you have gap year, and if you did not plan it well, maybe it will, like, gap year is not a good choice for you. So plan well.
I mean, like, what's the best way, like, to go to travel somewhere or to go?
Travel where? Like, where do you want to go, or?
I mean, generally. Like,
What do you think is the best way to spend the time that you take for a gap year? What should we do with that time? What's the best? What do you think is the best?
I think that you might spend time like be a volunteer at school, and because I like kids a lot, so I will be at school teaching kids maybe.
What if the gap year causes students to lose motivation to continue going to college?
That's okay. Go ahead and think about it for a second.
Maybe going to college isn't the only choice that you will go after gap year. Maybe you will start a new like a company, or maybe you will go work at somewhere. So you don't necessarily need to go to college maybe after gap year.
What if it causes students to lose motivation to, like, continue progressing what they want to do? So if somebody stays at home their entire gap year and they enjoy being at home, they enjoy living off their parents.
So if students who choose to do that, it's not a good choice. As I said, they shouldn't take gap year. So.
Do you think that students that want to go to college, but they also want to do the gap year, they should choose a college before they do the gap year, or they should choose it after or during?
I think they should choose it before, like after high school graduate, because I think if you choose it during the college, maybe it will affect your education at college.
Since one of the advantages that you spoke of could be travel, and yet some colleges offer the opportunity to travel, could that not be a way that they could avoid taking a gap year, is travel through the college's opportunity to travel instead?
I don't understand.
Okay, sure. Sometimes colleges, universities, offer opportunities to, for instance, study abroad, go to a different college and study, but you're still in school, or to take trips for educational purposes and travel that way. So would that maybe take away anything from the gap year and traveling during gap year, especially since it would not only be educational and give you a chance to travel? Wouldn't that maybe be better than taking gap year to travel?
I think like for that, school will plan, and for this gap year you can plan it by yourself. the money from the parents, but during the gap year, do we need to like earn the money?
I think if you work, if you have experience in work, it would be better. And also like school or gap year program will provide financial aid.
Do you think that high school should offer a gap year?
High school. I think like after you graduate, it's when you become more mature. So I think we should have gap year like after high school.
Anything else? All right, let's give Melody a round of applause. Thank you very much.